So, good evening, everyone. This is our second class in the biology section. If you have any queries from the last class, you can please ask. I also have one question, one UPSC question, which I want you to try and solve, just to check if you remember something which we did from the last class. Okay. So UPSC does this standard pattern of match the following type of questions. So let's see if you can answer these. Answer this one question. Okay, so Ruth has asked, coconut oil is not solid at room temperature. First of all, coconut oil is at a solid and a thick consistency at room temperature. It has those property. It can definitely be solid also at room temperature. That is the first thing. The second thing is this is not a defining criteria. If you remember, I emphasized on the fact that they are mostly, okay, mostly they are solids, but not always. Mostly they are animal sources also. But again, for that also coconut oil is an exception. And coconut oil in its normal conditions, at normal room temperature, particularly in these days, it's harder than a brick. So it can be solid. The second thing is there can be examples of saturated oils like palm oil, for example. Palm oil as such is liquid, okay, but not coconut oil. You cannot say that entirely for coconut oil. It does exhibit the property of being a solid. Okay, but yes, this is not the defining feature which defines a particular fat to be saturated or unsaturated. Being saturated is going to be determined by the fact that if it does not have a double bond, it is a saturated fatty acid. All right. Okay, so I have answers as A from Sushila, Shivani, Kirti, Kartike, Prabhakar, Vishwanath, Karan, Simran and Shagun. Let's see the question. Vitamins and their deficiency diseases. Consider the following pairs. Which of the pair given above are correctly matched? Okay, so once you start seeing UPSC questions, you will find a lot of questions based on this line. Match the following types. So let's try and match this. Vitamin C, scurvy. This is correct. One is correct. So we eliminate any option which does not have one. I'm going to do this exercise with you in the first few questions so that you develop this habit. See, you are getting a lot of self-test questions also to practice. So while doing those also, try and utilize this step-by-step approach. It's going to be very, very helpful for you. Then vitamin D, rickets. This is also correct. So 2 is as such there in both the options. Now see, if you did not know about vitamin D or rickets, still you would have gotten to this answer. Fine. The last one, vitamin E and night blindness. This, of course, is incorrect because vitamin A is responsible for night blindness and not vitamin E. So third is incorrect. Answer is A, 1 and 2 only. And all of you have got this correct, so very good. Okay. Answer is A, 1 and 2 only. And Smriti and Raja have also given the correct answer. So in our series of nutrients, the next thing which we are supposed to do is minerals. If you remember, we studied carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and vitamins in the last class, right? We studied their properties. We are going to now talk about minerals. The most distinguishing feature of mineral as compared to the other nutrients is that minerals are inorganic. Right? Inorganic elements singly like uh, sodium, chlorine, all these different, they will be available in some form, but then they are not in the form of organic compounds. So they are inorganic. We are going to divide our minerals into two parts. First one we are going to call macro minerals, and then we are going to call the second one micro minerals. You can maybe in one write down that what is a mineral, then we will go to the next part. Minerals, they are inorganic nutrients. Minerals are inorganic micronutrients. Please write down. Inorganic micronutrients that also play a key role in ensuring health and well-being. Okay, one question from Shagun. Trans fats are made while converting unsaturated into unsaturated, but trans fat is itself an unsaturated fat. See, trans fat is, if technically we have to say, it will have, we do not exactly use the word that we have changed it into a saturated fat, okay? Because originally it was unsaturated fat, despite the fact that we have broken down its double bond, we still, because its original property or its originality is that of an unsaturated compound. So we say that it is an unsaturated fatty acid only. Its structure is that of an unsaturated fatty acid only, but it's just that it has been hydrogenated. Okay, so we do not exactly use the word that unsaturated is converted into saturated. It implies the same thing, that we are breaking double bonds, but we will not use the word saturated. Why? Because its structure, in the way its atoms are arranged, it chemically, it is originally a unsaturated fatty acid only. Okay, so if we have to talk about trans fats, we are going to say they are unsaturated fats which have been hydrogenated. Okay, that's how we are going to put this statement. I hope it is clear. Now for macro and micro minerals. Just like macro and micronutrients, this also has to do with quantity. Okay, macro minerals are those minerals which are needed in a larger amount, okay, needed in more quantity, and in comparison to this, micro minerals would be those which are needed in a lesser amount. Lesser quantity, smaller amount is what they are needed in. Okay, so macro, out of the minerals, they are needed in more amount. Micro, they are needed in lesser amount. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to write down all the macro and micro minerals, and then one by one we will write about them in a very similar manner like we wrote for vitamins. Okay, so for macro minerals, we have sodium, we have magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, chlorine, sulfur, and calcium. These are your macro minerals. And micro minerals are copper, zinc, iron, iodine, and fluorine. So let's write about each of these one by one. We'll start with sodium. Please start writing. Start writing with sodium. First macro mineral, sodium. Source of sodium is your table salt. Table salt. Then its function is that it helps in muscle movement. It helps in muscle movement and to maintain fluid balance in the body. And to maintain fluid balance in the body, its deficiency can cause fluid imbalance. Its deficiency can cause fluid imbalance and thus dehydration. Fluid imbalance and thus dehydration. Then write down magnesium. Magnesium. Sources are nuts, seeds, and its deficiency will cause poor muscle coordination. Poor muscle coordination. Then next write down potassium. Potassium. Most of the fruits and vegetables. Potassium, most of the fruits and vegetables. Its deficiency will cause muscle weakness. Its deficiency will cause muscle weakness. Then the next is phosphorus. Phosphorus. Sources, pulses, milk, pulses and milk. Phosphorus is needed. Phosphorus is needed in your teeth and bones. Phosphorus is needed in your teeth and bones. A deficiency of phosphorus thus will cause weak teeth and bones. Weak teeth and bones. Then chlorine. Chlorine. Now chlorine is also found in common salt, your table salt. Table salt is actually sodium chloride. Okay, sodium chloride is your table salt. So the source of chlorine will also be uh, table salt. Table salt. And like sodium, it also helps to maintain the fluid balance, and its deficiency will cause dehydration. So you can write down. It helps to maintain the fluid balance in the body. It helps to maintain the fluid balance in the body, and its deficiency causes dehydration, causing dehydration and weakness. Dehydration and weakness. Then sulfur. Sulfur. Sulfur is found in onion and garlic. Sources of sulfur would be onion and garlic. And sulfur is a part of some proteins. Sulfur is a part of some proteins. So a deficiency of sulfur will cause protein deficiency. Deficiency of sulfur causes protein deficiency. Then the last one in macro minerals, calcium. Calcium. Source, I think this you all know, milk and milk products. बचपन से ही सिखाया जाता है, right? From childhood only you are asked कि milk gives you calcium and makes your bones stronger, no? Milk and milk products, and it's associated both with bones and muscles. Okay, both bones and muscles. So a deficiency of calcium will give brittle bones and a bad muscle movement. Brittle bones and a bad muscle movement. After this, micro minerals. First one, copper. Sources are pulses, nuts and seeds. Pulses, nuts and seeds. Its deficiency will lead to low white blood cell count. Its deficiency will lead to low white blood cell count. Then we have zinc. So zinc is there in meat, in chia seeds. Remember chia seeds from the last class? And beans. and zinc is needed to maintain the immune system. Zinc is needed to maintain the immune system, and its deficiency can lead to various conditions. So deficiency can lead to various conditions like diarrhea or hair loss. Diarrhea and hair loss. So you might have heard about zinc, right, with this coming of COVID. So zinc tablets have been prescribed to a lot of people. Those who suffer from COVID and otherwise as a prevention also, people have been asked to take zinc tablets. So why zinc? Because zinc is needed to maintain your immunity. Okay, so that is one thing. The second thing is you might have seen some of those ads where government advertises the oral rehydration solution, ORS. So that is given to anybody who is suffering from diarrhea. Along with ORS, there is also a prescription of zinc tablets. Maybe you are aware of that. But what is the purpose of this zinc is that it is supposed to stabilize. Like diarrhea means there is fluid loss from your body. And once this fluid loss is taking place, you have to like go back to the original levels. So zinc really helps in maintaining that levels. So the treatment of diarrhea, particularly in children where the problem can become very severe, it is you give that ORS solution and along with that you give zinc tablets. Fine. The next one is iron. So yeah, in the last class we spoke about hemoglobin. B12 is needed for the formation of hemoglobin. That's what we studied. This hemoglobin is made up of iron. Iron is one of its components. Okay, so a deficiency of iron will mean that there is a deficiency of hemoglobin, and the deficiency of hemoglobin we have already discussed is called anemia. So that anemia where B12 was less was pernicious anemia. This anemia we are going to call iron deficiency anemia. Okay, so write down iron sources. Red meats. Okay, so those who are non-vegetarian, they would know what is a red meat. For others, I can tell you it's like goat, lamb, beef, all of these qualify as red meat. Then pumpkins, apricots. Then iron, you can write down, iron is a component of hemoglobin. Iron is a component of hemoglobin. And its deficiency thus causes iron deficiency anemia. Its deficiency thus causes iron deficiency anemia. And it is a very, very common condition, particularly in India. Particularly, it is very critical for women of reproductive age. So they are prescribed iron tablets also to be taken as regular supplements, especially if they are going to reproduce or they are pregnant. In those cases, iron stores have to be at appropriate levels. Then the next one is iodine. Iodine. Now the source of iodine is iodized table salt. So your normal table salt, what was that? That was sodium chloride. Additionally, iodine is added to it. Why it is added? Because otherwise we do not have a natural source of iodine which is needed in our diet. So some seafood items have iodine, but because that's not a prominent part of the diet of most of the people, so what is being done is iodine is being added to sodium chloride. Okay. Now what does this iodine do? So there is a hormone called thyroid hormone. And this hormone contains iodine. So iodine is needed for the manufacture of thyroid hormone, and if this iodine is deficient, that means thyroid hormone will be deficient and there is a disease called goiter which can take place. And again, I'll take you to one of those government advertisements which you earlier were never paying attention to. So now is the time to carefully study what they are talking about. So they talk about the significance of iodized table salt. Oh, this is the not Tata Namak ka ad, but this is the government advertisement I'm talking about. So they'll say कि आयोडीन की कमी से किसी को भी खेंगा हो सकता है. You might remember that. So that khenga is what goiter is. Okay, this goiter is because of the deficiency of iodine, which is responsible for making the thyroid hormone. Okay, please write down iodine, source, iodized table salt, iodized table salt. Then write down it is a component of the thyroid hormone. It is a component of the thyroid hormone. And its deficiency. Oh, actually I have misspelled it, sorry. Its deficiency causes goiter. Its deficiency can cause goiter. The last one, fluorine. Fluorine. Source of fluorine is drinking water, normal drinking water, and seafood. Normal drinking water and seafood. Fluorine helps to prevent the teeth from decay. Fluorine helps to prevent the teeth from decay. So that means if fluorine is not there, then your teeth will decay. And when I say teeth to decay, so that means the caries. Okay, the caries, the technical term is caries. The common term is tooth decay. And the vernacular terminology is दांत में कीड़ा लगना. Okay, what is that? दांत में कीड़ा लगना, that is tooth decay or caries. Okay, so this fluorine has a purpose of preventing this from happening. So that is why, again, more advertisements we have to talk about. All your toothpaste advertisements, they talk about this thing that we have added fluoride crystals, and then you have those graphics with all the fluoride going and sitting inside the toothpaste. Why do we need those additional fluoride crystals or fluoride in your toothpaste? Is to prevent from tooth decay. So fluoride prevents tooth decay, and thus its deficiency will cause tooth decay, or its deficiency, you can say, causes caries. All right. So this is your macro and micro minerals. Now there is this one question which UPSC asked on minerals. See if you can solve this. Until you send me answers to this, I'll take your queries. Manu has asked, saturated fat is beneficial for the body to some extent. Is it correct? Yes, it's absolutely correct, Manu. that saturated fat definitely has some benefit, the conventional benefits which fats gives. So saturated fats are also capable of doing that. So some amount of saturated fats you must include in your diet, right? Like ghee, for example, as you have put in. Particularly if you are in a winter place right now, and in winters it becomes more important when you have a high amount of saturated fat, because it helps you get your body heat, and it helps you get those extra calories which would be providing you protection against the cold. So it definitely is beneficial. The problem is only when you start taking it in excess. That's when the problem starts. Otherwise, it's good. Second question is from Udit. So Udit is saying, in the nutrients, where do water and all dietary fibers stand? See, dietary fibers and water, you can additionally categorize them as such. Not in particular, we are not going to particularly call them macro or micronutrients. Okay. But if you have to call them in terms of quantity, so they will be in macronutrients only. Water is additionally, it has to be there. It is a major part of your diet. So we can say that dietary fibers are basically a form of carbohydrates only. They are complex carbohydrates, like cellulose in particular forms most of the dietary fiber. Okay, so this cellulose, why we say it is a dietary fiber is because it cannot be digested. For human beings, we do not have the enzymes which can break this cellulose down. So it just adds bulk to your food, and then it just comes out of your system. Okay, so we say it is roughage. You might have heard this term, roughage. Its only purpose is to help in the digestion process, help in the bowel movement. That is what dietary fiber is. Fine. If sodium helps in muscle movement, then why people with high blood pressure are advised to have less or no salt? Okay. So see, salt as such, one function of sodium we wrote that it is needed for muscle function. Okay. The second one I also made you write, fluid balance. People who have high blood pressure because of increased sodium levels, okay, in salt also sodium is the troublemaker. So in their body, whatever sodium was needed, right, for muscle movement or any other purposes in the body, the salt in their body is more than that level which they can use. Okay, it's more than what they can use for that muscle movement. So now when it is in excess, what it is doing is it is increasing, it has increased the concentration of blood, right? Blood has more minerals now. So because it has more minerals, it is exerting more pressure. So if we take less salt, our blood pressure will reduce, because now blood has less things, less minerals to hold. In terms of concentration, its concentration is less, so pressure exerted is also less. So it's not that people are not supposed to take sodium. They already have sodium in that amount in which they are needed in the body. Because not just salt, from other food products also, and from different things in the body, different processes, salt would be there. It's just the quantity which is more than what the body is using, so it is leading to increase in your blood pressure. Okay. Permissive anemia and anemia. So Shubham, I think the word which you are looking for is pernicious anemia, right? We studied this in the last class. Pernicious anemia. Anemia, basically, when you say the word anemia, this means that there is a deficiency of hemoglobin. Whenever hemoglobin is deficient, we say it is anemia. If we say it is pernicious anemia, that means this deficiency of hemoglobin is because of deficiency of B12. If we say it is, the second type of anemia is iron deficiency anemia. This is because of, obviously, iron is deficient. So anemia is common. It means that hemoglobin formation is less. The cause because of which this anemia formation or this hemoglobin is less, that is different. Pernicious mein it is because of B12. B12 is needed for formation of hemoglobin, and iron deficiency mein iron is less. That is the difference. What does magnesium do for our body? So magnesium is needed for the muscle contraction, the different reactions which take place which cause muscle movement. That is, I think we've written that. Okay, the answer, I have two types of answers here. So I have Vartika, Krishna, Shivam saying it should be C. And I have Shriya, Vidhi and Yogesh saying it should be A. All right. Calcium, iron and sodium. Which of the following minerals given above are required by the human body for the contraction of muscles? Now see, from this simple dry factual topic, they've tried to apply whatever you know, integrate it and ask it to you so that you are confused. Calcium, iron, sodium. Even if you are not very sure about calcium and sodium, iron you should definitely know. Iron, the purpose of iron in the body is to be a part of hemoglobin. That is the role of iron. So iron would not be there. If I can eliminate that, then B and D would definitely not be the answer. Okay. And that is what I can see also. They're saying कि streaming नहीं हो रही है सही, पर हमारी तो screen सही है. लिख कर भेजा, आप check कर लो एक बार. Okay, so that's why we don't have A, B or D. So I guess you have identified iron. Now the problem with this is with calcium and sodium. So both calcium and sodium are needed for muscle contraction. Muscle contraction just means how muscles move. So this is a contractive motion in which muscle movement is there. Okay, they contract. Contraction of muscle needs both the things, calcium and magnesium. It's a very complex process. Things go inside the cell, then things come outside the cell. It works like that. So both of these would be needed. Answer is 1 and 3 only, C. 1 and 3 only, C. C is the correct answer here. So we've completed with this portion of food and nutrition, and we come to our next chapter. So we're going to start at the base of biology, and this is what biology or life is all about. It's the cell, and the cell is taking a selfie, and we are just going to zoom into its selfie and see what are the different structures in the cell. Okay, so we will talk about different organisms based on these cells and the components of the cell. Starting first with the idea of life, very broadly, life needs some life processes An organism should be doing some activities because of which it will qualify as a living form. Okay. So what are those life processes? One we have spoken about is nutrition. You need food. Okay, you need to take food. Then you need to digest this food. Then you have the process of respiration, in which this digested food is used to produce energy. Then you have the process of circulation. Digestion would take place at a different place, respiration at a different place. So there needs some coordination in the body, some movement. Then you have excretion. Whatever is not needed, that is supposed to be removed. And to manage all of this, you need control and coordination. Okay, between different parts of an organism, control and coordination is needed. And for life to be possible, to continue, you also need reproduction. Right? So you have to reproduce, otherwise after one organism, the existence of that species will come to an end. So you reproduce so as to maintain that continuity of that line. Fine? So life processes. Now these life processes are performed by the cell. Cell is the basic unit which can do all the functions which are needed for an organism to survive, and in terms of structure also. Like imagine a brick wall. Okay, brick wall or a wall as such has small bricks, smaller components, and all of these bricks join together to form a larger structure, which is the wall. Similarly, any organism, like if I am standing here, my body is made up of cells. There are millions of cells, but the smallest unit, the basic unit, is the cell, which is repeated multiple times. Okay, so cell is that unit which can perform all the functions of life. Alone it can exist, and structurally also it can exist singularly, it can exist alone, and in multiple in organisms with more than one cells, different of these cells together constitute the whole organism. Okay, so please write this down. A cell is the basic structural and functional unit, the basic structural and functional unit of all known organisms. Of all known organisms. Now why are we using the word all known is because, there might be some new species identified on Mars, and Martians might not have cells. They might have something else. We don't know. So that is why the word all known. As of what we know today, everything is made up of cells. Now the number of these cells can be variable. And depending on that, we have two types of organisms. Okay, now we are talking about organisms. These cells are making organisms, making different living things. So we're going to talk about their classification. Based on the number of cells, we have unicellular, and the word should tell you uni means one. So these are the organisms which have only one cell. Single-celled organism, and the second one is multicellular. Multicellular means more than one cell. Okay. Unicellular means one cell only. Single-celled organism, that means all the life processes which we spoke about, digestion, respiration, excretion, all of that are being done by this single cell. It is existing alone. In multicellular, different cells are there, more than one cells are there, and there can be two possibilities in this case. Either there are a small number of cells, each of them are doing their own functions, all the life processes, or what can happen is that cells might become specialized. Okay, like in human beings. You have the stomach doing the role of digestion. You have your kidneys doing the task of excretion, right? Specialization. Those the cells of kidney become different as compared to the cells of the stomach. Fine. Why? Because now this is a division of labor kind of a setup which has come up. Okay. Unicellular organisms, you can say they are the simpler organisms. Functioning of their bodies are easier because they would be smaller in size. But in multicellular organisms, it will become more complex depending on as the number of cells increase. Okay? Let's write both these things down. Then we'll write down the examples also. First, write down unicellular organisms. You can unicellular organisms. These are organisms. These are organisms which contain only a single cell, which contain only a single cell, which performs all the life processes, which performs all the life processes. And you can see this on your screen. There are some examples of unicellular organisms. So you have amoeba, you have euglena, paramecium, bacteria. Now you don't need to know about these in detail in terms of specific characteristics. Just remember them as examples. Okay, amoeba, euglena, paramecium and bacteria. Then write down multicellular organisms. Multicellular organisms. Organisms which consist of more than one cell. Organisms which consist of more than one cell. The different cells are specialized. The different cells are specialized for different functions. The different cells are specialized for different functions, and all of which coordinate to make life possible in an organism. To make life possible in an organism. And then, of course, you can write down any examples. You have plants, you have humans, you have the insect, right? You can see them on your board. See, a lot of detail is not needed in this portion, but you should have some idea because you will come across these terms at some places. So some idea you must definitely have. The next classification of organisms we are going to do based on the organization in cells. So inside the cells, how things are organized, that is going to be the basis of the next classification. For this, we need a few concepts before we can understand this. The first is genetic material. Now, genetic material is something which determines the characteristics of an organism and also which helps the organism to pass the characteristic from one generation to the other. Like simply understand, you have some of your characteristics, maybe your hair, your eyes, which are coming from your mother. And there are those others which are coming from your father, right? So they are giving you some of their traits. How they are giving you? They are giving this to you through the genetic material. And then this genetic material becomes instrumental in determining your qualities. Okay, whatever qualities you have, whatever characters you have, they are determined by genetic material. Now this genetic material can be DNA or RNA. For most of the organisms, almost all of the organisms, DNA is the main genetic material. Okay, you've heard about DNA, right? Some viruses are an exception to this. Some viruses have RNA as their genetic material. We are going to study genetics, and in that we are going to talk about what is DNA, what is RNA. Here you can just remember that DNA is the genetic material. What is it supposed to do? It's supposed to transfer characters from one generation to the other, and in an individual it determines the characteristics, traits. Okay. Now the way this genetic material is arranged, that is different in the two types of organisms. What are these two types of organisms? First one is prokaryotic and then eukaryotic. In prokaryotic organisms, the genetic material or DNA is circular. And in eukaryotic organisms, DNA is linear in the form of rod-shaped structures, chromosomes. So chromosomes are special structures. Okay, chromosomes are special structures which are rod-shaped. They are made up of DNA. Okay, and they compose the genetic material of eukaryotic organisms. So in eukaryotic organisms, your DNA is linear. Linear. How linear? It is in a rod shape. And what are these rod-shaped structures called? They are called chromosomes. So when DNA is present in a rod shape, it is called a chromosome. And that is how it is found in eukaryotes. Fine. Let's see this in this picture also here. This is a prokaryotic cell. In this prokaryotic cell, this is the simpler cell. This was the cell which was formed earlier as compared to the eukaryotic cell. So it has this central, you can say, this circular type of DNA, joined DNA. It is found in a region called nucleoid region. So it's just kept inside in the cell and it is called the nucleoid region. In a eukaryote, you have a special nucleus, a special structure called nucleus, and this nucleus has a membrane. Membrane simply means covering. Okay, membrane means covering. So this nucleus, you can see this structure, right? This is supposed to be an enclosed thing. So there is a nucleus with a nuclear membrane, and inside that, we cannot see them as such. Okay, they are visible only at the time of cell division, but they are present, the chromosomes are present, though not visible. They would be visible only at the time of cell division, but they are there. So inside the nucleus, the genetic material is present and it is enclosed within a membrane. Similarly, there are other organelle here. Okay, you can see these different structures here. Separate structures, different colored. In prokaryotes, there are no structures. Okay, there are no structures. It's just this one uniform thing which is there, but no separate structures like in eukaryotic. Now, what are these? These are called the organelle. Cell organelle. So, the second difference is DNA is in nucleoid region. Here, DNA is in nucleus. Then they have cell organelle. Just like an organism has organs, cells at the cellular level, they have organelle. So organelle would be for these functions. Different functions have to be performed by the cell. It has to do nutrition, excretion, circulation. For all of this, separate smaller structures, dedicated areas are there, which are called organelle. Organelle are those areas which will do the different functions of the cell. In prokaryotes, there are no membrane bound. All these organelles will have membrane. Membrane is covering. Okay? No membrane bound organelle. So how are the different functions being performed in the prokaryotic cell? It is just that the area is not fixed. Anywhere anything can happen. At a place nutrition will happen, from that same place excretion will take place, but they don't have dedicated areas like in the case of a eukaryote, which has cell organelle which have membranes. Okay, so this you can say is a simplistic pattern, a simple cell. This was developed earlier. Eukaryotes came to be developed on later on, but even today we have some prokaryotes which are there. The examples would be bacteria, or you have cyanobacteria. Okay, at some places you will also see the word used archaea or archaic bacteria. All of these are prokaryotic organisms, and anything else, right from fungus to plants to amoeba, animals, everything will be eukaryotic. Okay, let's write this down. So it's all in the board, but I'll just maybe make you write this again. Prokaryotics, please write down. Prokaryotic organisms. Prokaryotic organisms are unicellular organisms. Are unicellular organisms which lack a membrane bound nucleus which lack a membrane-bound nucleus and cell organelle. Which lack a membrane-bound nucleus or cell organelle. The genetic material is circular. The genetic material is circular and is present. The genetic material is circular and is present in the nucleoid region. And then of course you write down example. See this bacteria, cyanobacteria archaea, cyanobacteria is also called blue-green algae. So the other name of cyanobacteria is blue-green algae. Then write down eukaryotic organisms. Eukaryotic organisms. They have membrane-bound nucleus and cell organelle. Membrane-bound nucleus and cell organelle. The genetic material is linear. The genetic material is linear and is organized in the form of rod-like structures called chromosomes. Is organized in the form of rod-like structures called chromosomes. And then you can write down the examples. You can write down plants, animals, fungi, whatever you want to call, amoeba. Nishant is asking, can there be unicellular eukaryotic organisms? Yes. Eukaryotic organisms can be both unicellular and multicellular. Both the forms are possible. Okay, and for eukaryotic, you have unicellular also and you have multicellular also. Both are possible. Okay, but prokaryotic mein only unicellular is a possibility. So Nishant, for you a specific example is all of these organisms, amoeba, paramecium, euglena. They are unicellular and as well as they are eukaryotic. Okay, unicellular and eukaryotic. Fine. यहाँ से चल जाएगा वीडियो? हाँ, चल रहा है ना? बाद में चलाएंगे. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little break here because the next section is going to take a lot of time. So after that we will start with the cell and components of the cell. Okay, let's just take a short break. Okay, so welcome back. I have one question. Protein, peptide, starch, polysaccharide. Okay. Hormones, amino acid, amylase enzyme. Okay, so the first one is, so I've been asked by Pooja, what is the relationship? The first one is the example, and the second one tells what it is. Like peptides, okay, proteins are peptides, or starch is a type of polysaccharide. Hormones and amino acid, this I don't think is correct. Hormones can, amino acids can be a hormone. But then again, this is a strange kind of an example to put in this list. But yes, hormone, some amino acids can be hormones. That is a possibility. Then amylase is a type of enzyme. And amylase is a type of enzyme. We're going to talk about amylase enzyme when we do digestive system also. I don't know where you got this from, Pooja, but hormone and amino acid, I don't like this correlation exactly because the others are very well befitting. But hormone will not always be amino acid. It can be a fatty acid also. It can be a steroid also. It can be some other different compound. So this is not generally, it's not going to be like always true. Rest of the things are fine. Proteins are a type of, proteins are peptides, starch is a polysaccharide, amylase is an enzyme. The others fit in well. Now we have to talk about the different components of the cell. What is the cell made up of? What do the different parts do? That's our next topic. Components of the cell. The first component we're going to talk about is the cell membrane. You see this outermost structure, the outermost surrounding? This is the cell membrane. All the cells are going to have an outer covering which is called the cell membrane. It's made up of lipids, and a particular type of lipids called phospholipids. Okay, phospholipids are a particular type of fat which make up the cell membrane, right? And what will this cell membrane do? Basically, it's giving the shape to the internal structures. It is holding the contents inside, and it will also be monitoring what goes inside the cell, what comes outside. That is the job of your cell membrane. Okay, I'm going to make you write all of these down. The second one, which we are going to talk about, it's not shown in this structure because this is an animal cell. But if this were a plant cell, there would be another structure. Cell membrane would be there. Okay, cell membrane would be there, but outside the cell membrane, there is another structure called cell wall. Okay, there is another structure in some plants, in all plants, bacteria and fungi. They have a structure outside the cell membrane which is supposed to provide extra support to these cells, and that is the cell wall. Animal cells will not have the cell wall, they will only have the cell membrane. Fine. Let's write both these things down. Please write the cell membrane first. Cell membrane. It is a biological membrane. It is a biological membrane that separates the interior of, that separates the interior of all the cells, the interior of all the cells from the outside environment. The interior of all the cells from the outside environment. They are made up of phospholipids. They are made up of phospholipids. Then write down cell wall. Cell wall. It is the structural layer. It is the structural layer surrounding the cell membrane. It is the structural layer surrounding the cell membrane in certain types of cells. In certain types of cells. So this cell wall is made up of, the cell wall is made up of cellulose in case of plants. Please note this down. Cellulose in plants, chitin in fungi, okay, chitin in fungi, and peptidoglycans in case of bacteria. So these are the name of the different compounds of which the cell wall is made. Plants में cellulose, fungi, chitin, and in bacteria they are called peptidoglycans. Persani has asked the presence of nucleus. What is the difference between animal and bacterial cell? So this is the same difference which is there in prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. Bacterial cell is a prokaryotic cell. Animal cell is a eukaryotic cell. So animal cell has a nucleus and the nucleus contains genetic material. Bacterial cell or prokaryotic cell does not have a nucleus and the genetic material or DNA is arranged in a circular pattern found in the nucleoid region. So the difference between animal cell and bacterial cell is the same as that of eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. Okay. The next component is the cytoplasm. Once we go across from the cell membrane, inside that there is a medium. This is a liquid medium, and in this medium all the different things will be kept. Okay. The main structure inside the cell is the nucleus. Okay, we've already discussed what is a nucleus. Nucleus contains genetic material, it has a membrane, it has the DNA arranged in the form of chromosomes. So we can say the cell has two components after the cell membrane inside. One is your nucleus and the other one is cytoplasm. Okay. Nucleus and cytoplasm together are called protoplasm. Protoplasm, which is your cytoplasm and nucleus. So protoplasm is another part which is cytoplasm and nucleus together. So this they say is the living part. After that is the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. The other name of cell membrane is plasma membrane. Okay, so if we have the plasma membrane and protoplasm, that means we're talking about the whole cell. Okay, so write this down. Start with cytoplasm. Cytoplasm consists of cytoplasm consists of all the components of the cell, all the components of the cell enclosed within the cell membrane, other than the nucleus, and then please write down nucleus or cell nucleus. It is the controlling center of the activities of the cell It is generally spherical in shape. It is spherical in shape and located in the center of the cell. The genetic material is in the form of chromosomes. The genetic material is in the form of chromosomes. Okay. Then write down protoplasm. The living part of the cell which includes the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Now the next structure you can see these small dots, they're called the ribosomes. Now cells, for their different functions, they will need different proteins. Like for instance, enzymes. All enzymes are proteins. So ribosomes are going to be those sites, those structures where protein synthesis, that means formation of proteins will take place. Ribosomes, centers of protein synthesis. Then these ribosomes, they can be present either freely inside the cytoplasm like they are in this case, or they can be attached to another structure called endoplasmic reticulum. You see these structures, tubular or sheet-like structures. They are the endoplasmic reticulum and they are transport channels. Like something has to go from the nucleus to some part of the cytoplasm or from one part of the cytoplasm to the other part. Who is going to transport things? This is going to be the job of the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay. So endoplasmic reticulum also abbreviated as ER. It would be of two types. One is the rough. We are going to call them rough ER when they have ribosomes attached. And then smooth. If these ribosomes are not attached, if the ribosomes are missing, then ribosomes absent, then we say they are smooth. So endoplasmic reticulum can be of two types, with ribosomes, without ribosomes. Ribosomes also in their own sense, they can either be present freely or attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. So if ribosomes are attached to the endoplasmic reticulum, we can say that rough ER plays a role in protein synthesis. And the smooth one, okay, it cannot form proteins because that is the job of ribosomes, but what it will do is fat manufacture, fat production, formation of fats, that is associated with smooth. So if you have a question asking you that endoplasmic reticulum is associated with the synthesis of proteins only, you know that it is incorrect, because there is a smooth part of endoplasmic reticulum which is associated with fats. Okay. So you have ribosomes, you have endoplasmic reticulum for transport, and then you have another structure called Golgi bodies. Now these are parallel structures inside the cell. All of these are organelle, all of these have membranes or covering, they are all membrane bound, and this does the job of packaging. Okay, things which have to go outside the cell or have to come inside the cell, they cannot just like that go, they have to be packaged. And Golgi body is your packaging center. Okay, it is the packaging center in the cell. Okay, let's write these three things down, then we will go ahead. Okay, Lakshya has asked, does coronavirus has RNA as its genetic material? Yes, Lakshya, you are absolutely correct. Coronavirus or your HIV virus, they are those few viruses which have RNA as their main genetic material. Absolutely correct. And Girdhar says that protoplasm includes cytoplasm and nucleoplasm only. I don't think so. I will not agree to this statement. You can check if you have some standard source through which you can claim this. Please share it with us. But to the best of my knowledge, it is the whole of nucleus and not just the liquid part. Okay, Giridhar? Ribosomes, right? Please write ribosomes. Ribosomes are the sites of protein synthesis. Ribosomes are the sites of protein synthesis in the cell. Sites of protein synthesis in the cell. Then write down endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum. It is a large network. It is a large network of membrane bound. It is a large network of membrane bound tubes and sheets which act as channels of transport, for material between different parts of the cytoplasm, or the cytoplasm and nucleus, rough endoplasmic reticulum, then please write down rough endoplasmic reticulum. They have attached ribosomes. And act as sites for formation and transportation of proteins. Then smooth endoplasmic reticulum. They do not have ribosomes. And help in the manufacture of fat molecules. Also write down one more line in the end. Ribosomes can exist both freely and attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. Then write down Golgi apparatus or Golgi bodies. They are structures. Golgi bodies are structures arranged parallel to each other. The material synthesized in the cell is packaged and dispatched to various targets inside and outside the cell. Next organelle is the mitochondria. Somehow this is the only thing people remember from their biology. If you ask them one thing which you remember, that's going to be mitochondria. And every time you talk about mitochondria, everybody is excited. I have no idea why that is so, but yes, everybody knows mitochondria, so say hello to mitochondria. Mitochondria, or as you would fondly call it, the powerhouse of the cell. Okay. Mitochondria, there is a process, we are going to study it later, but here you can just remember. There is a process called cellular respiration. Sorry. There is a process called cellular respiration. All right. This cellular respiration is how energy is produced in the body. Okay, we will study how this works, but here you can just remember mitochondria does cellular respiration, because of which it produces energy, and it is called powerhouse of the cell. Okay, it is the powerhouse of the cell. And one more very special, unique property of mitochondria, which has been a source of many questions in a lot of exams, is that mitochondria has its own DNA. So there is one main DNA of the cell, which is inside the nucleus. Okay. Mitochondria has its own DNA, its own separate DNA. That is what you have to remember about mitochondria. Another organelle is the lysosome. Lysosome, like this is for cellular respiration, lysosome is for cellular digestion. And how will it do digestion? It contains enzymes. So any foreign body which comes into the cell, or anything which has to be removed, any organelle which is not working now, that has to be removed. All of this digestion process or breakdown process will be done by these organelles, lysosomes. Okay. Now imagine that there are enzymes to digest the cells. They are so powerful that given an opportunity, they can digest the whole cell. Now why would the cell want to be digested? Suppose this is a cell which is damaged. Okay, it is damaged, or it is decaying. So in that case, what happens? The lysosome opens up. It opens, it releases its enzyme into the cytoplasm. Everything, these enzymes are so powerful, everything will be digested, everything will be broken down, removing the whole cell. Because of this property of it killing its own cells, this is like the cell committing suicide. Okay, the cell is killing itself, that means the cell is committing suicide. So this leads us to call lysosomes as suicide bags of the cell. Okay, so one you have the powerhouse of the cell, and the second one is the suicide bag of the cell. We're going to write about both of these organelle now. Please remember this one thing, that for the organelle portion, the extent to which we are covering things in class is more than enough. You don't have to go for any head hunting. So this is enough. Question from Pranay. How dead virus will play a role in curing COVID-19? So Pranay, we have to understand a concept of vaccination. Okay, that is a part of our course. In the next class probably, we are going to reach that point. So I will explain how that works. Okay, so maybe if you can just wait for a little time, that how a dead virus can give us protection. It is basically through the mechanism of vaccination, which stimulates our immune system. Okay, so our immune system is stimulated in a way even with the dead virus, and that is how we get protection. We're going to study that in a lot of detail. Fine? Please write down mitochondria. Mitochondria. These are organelle which have their own DNA. These are organelle which have their own DNA. It performs cellular respiration. It performs cellular respiration, which leads to production of energy, making mitochondria the powerhouse of the cell. Making mitochondria the powerhouse of the cell. Then we have lysosomes. Please write down lysosomes. They contain powerful digestive enzymes. Which digest, or you can write down which break down any foreign material, as well as worn out cell organelle, which digest any foreign material as well as cell organelle. They can release their enzymes. Into the cytoplasm, and hence digest the whole damaged cell. Making them the suicide bags of the cell. All right. The next is vacuoles. Okay. So there are a number of vacuoles which you can see in this. So this is an animal cell. Vacuole is basically an organelle which will store anything which is in excess. Some acid is there, some fat is there, some starch is there, some fluid is there, whatever needs to be stored in the cell, that is stored in a vacuole. Okay. But the arrangement of this vacuole is different in plants and animal cells. Let's see how that works. This is a plant cell, right? I have drawn a cell wall, a cell membrane, and here we have the nucleus. This, on the other hand, is an animal cell and the nucleus. Vacuoles are storage structures. So, like animal cells, it will have multiple smaller structures, which will be the vacuoles. In plant cell, what happens is that there is one large single central vacuole. Instead of many small ones, there is one large single vacuole, and it is so large that the nucleus, which is supposed to be in the center, it's pushed to the periphery. Okay, here you see the nucleus is in the center, but in the plant cell, the nucleus is pushed to the side because of this large central vacuole. Now, what is the advantage of having this large single vacuole in plants is, you see there is a cell wall and there is a cell membrane. So if this cell wall is going to exert pressure on the cell membrane, right? Like this, there's going to be pressure. So what can happen is the cell can collapse. Because of the pressure which is coming from the cell wall on the cell membrane, the cell can collapse. The vacuole provides the pressure to support this. You can say counter pressure is provided. So vacuole, because of its large size, it provides pressure to the cell membrane so that it can easily stand in reference to the cell wall. Okay, so that is the utility of this one large vacuole. Fine, please write down vacuoles. Vacuoles are storage structures. Vacuoles are storage structures which are present in the form of multiple small structures in case of an animal cell, and a single large structure in case of a plant cell. Vacuoles in plants provide the pressure which holds the plasma membrane against the cell wall. Okay, plasma membrane or cell membrane, they are the same thing. Okay, let me take your questions. Priya has asked, how does lysosome get to know when it's time to release enzymes? So Priya, this would be one question which is nearly impossible to answer, at least in the forum in which I am discussing, because then you will ask that when does mitochondria know that it has to do respiration, or when does vacuole know that it is supposed to store things, right? There are different, what should I say, chemical signals in the cells which is allowing all these processes to automatically take place. What does that mean? So that maybe, when there is a damaged cell, then the lysosomes will start bringing out their enzymes. Or when there is a foreign material which has come, then lysosomes will start doing its function. Or the whole cell is damaged, then it will release its enzyme in the cytoplasm. So like this, when there is a need for them to perform their function, there is some change which has taken place. So in response to that change, that function will take place. All right. Okay, for lysosomes only, Raja has asked what will be the foreign material. Foreign material can be a foreign cell. Okay, maybe suppose a viral cell has come, or another cell from any other part has come, or maybe something like some other irritant, some blood components, anything. It could be anything. Anything which is not supposed to be there. It can be a liquid, it can be a cell. That would be the foreign material here. Okay. Does mitochondria use your oxygen for cellular respiration, Abhishek? In the process of cellular respiration, oxygen is utilized, right? But the site for utilization is mitochondria, but along with that, this is a complex process. There are 2-3 processes which take place in this whole exercise. We are going to talk about this equation, but something takes place in the cytoplasm also. Some steps, there is a multi-step, that utilization of oxygen is there, but there are multiple steps. Some take place in the mitochondria, some in the cytoplasm. Okay. But cellular respiration, in general, if you ask me, cellular respiration uses oxygen. That is correct. Its utilization, if you are saying exactly is it taking place in the mitochondria, for that I will say that no, not exactly in the mitochondria. Multiple steps are there, some in the mitochondria, some in the cytoplasm also. Fine. Okay. Anjali has asked, is it important to know who named the components of the cell? No, absolutely not. The scientists' names are not important as far as UPSC is concerned, unless and until there is a new discovery which has taken place and there is a Nobel Prize which is given like next year. So you don't need to know. UPSC is not going into these aspects for, I think, almost 20 years now. So you don't have to put in an effort. But yes, for state services exams and a lot of other types of exam, this scientist name is important, not for UPSC. But biology is a very prominent section in a lot of your exams, particularly the state services exams, or if any other exam you want to write down, such kind of competitive exams. So a lot of portion of bio is asked, and such scientists type questions are also there in that part, factual information. But UPSC, absolutely not. You don't even have to look into it or think about it. The only scientist whose name you have to know would be the ones who are getting a Nobel Prize or who are a part of your current affairs. Otherwise, there is absolutely no need. Khushbu has asked, okay, so Khushbu is saying, so when DNA is transferred from parents to their children, is it the DNA of the nucleus or is it the DNA of the mitochondria? So Khushbu, when we are talking about transmission of characters, we are talking about the characters from the nucleus, the main DNA. That is what is transferred. It is from the nucleus. Mitochondrial DNA is also transferred, but we will study about how mitochondrial DNA is transferred. Here I can tell you that in terms of human beings, this mitochondrial DNA is transferred only from mothers. Okay, we'll see why that is and how that is. But here you can, just because you've asked me a question, so I would like to tell you, mitochondrial DNA is transferred only from mothers, but the actual DNA which is controlling all your characteristics, that is coming equally from both the parents, your mother and your father. And when we are talking of transmission of characters, we are talking about the nuclear DNA only. Fine? Golgi bodies also store. No, Golgi bodies Lakshya will not store. Golgi bodies will only package. Okay, they are not going to be storing. They're going to package and send it to wherever the things are supposed to go. Fine. One last organelle is left for us to do, and that organelle is specific to plants. It is called plastids. Please write down plastids. They contain pigments. They contain pigments of different colors. They contain pigments of different colors and are found in plants only. They are found in plants only. They are of three types. First, chloroplast. Keep writing. It contains chlorophyll. Chloroplast. It contains chlorophyll and gives green color to the different parts of the plant. Green color to different parts of the plant. And you would normally know that leaves, we are talking about leaves here, leaves are the green parts of the plant. So chloroplastids basically is a cell organelle which is found only in plants. What is its role? It is going to contain certain pigments which will be giving some colors. So first type is chloroplast. It will give green color. It has chlorophyll. Second, chromoplast. Chromoplast, they give different colors. They give different colors to different parts of the plant. They give different colors to different parts of the plant, like flowers and fruits. So depending on whichever color they have to give, they will have that pigment. So if they have to give red color, so they'll have a specific pigment for red color like this. So they are going to be found. Chromoplast we will find in the colored parts of the plant. Third, leucoplast. They are white colored, and they contain starch, oil or proteins. And the last line you can write down, plastids also contain their own DNA. Plastids also contain their own DNA. Okay. See, now based on whatever characters we have done till now, we have studied till now, that is going to give you a good idea about how plants and animal cells are different, right? And we're just going to summarize that. You have studied everything. Okay, you've studied all of this already. We're just compiling this. So, please keep writing with me. Difference between the plant cell and animal cell. Plant cell, it contains a cell wall, right? Animal cell, only cell membrane. ठीक है? Animal cell, central position of nucleus. Whereas in plants, it is pushed to the periphery, you can see here. Peripheral nucleus. Okay? Why? Because of the large vacuole. So this will be your third point. Single large vacuole. Please keep writing them. Multiple small vacuoles. Multiple small vacuoles. Then in the plant cell you have chloroplast or plastids, which are not there in animal cell. Plastids are present, and here you can write down plastids are absent. And if you remember something from the last class, we can also categorize their storage products here. So in animal cells, you have glycogen, and plant cells have starch. Now this becomes another point of difference. You've studied that here. We are just arranging this in terms of the different cells. Okay. So this is something which we have already done. We are just revising and summarizing this down. So this brings us to the end of this topic of the different components of the cell. Now this is a question which UPSC has asked. This is this year's question, 2020. Okay, so the official answer key is not out as of now, but then this is a simple question and I'm hoping all of you would be able to get this correct. You know, sometimes when we are studying some things, we feel like, why are we, even studying this? The relevance of a portion can only be assessed by solving questions. So familiarize yourself, go through more and more questions so that things make better sense to you, right? Maybe somebody who was sitting in the class last year when I was teaching plant cell and animal cell in a similar pattern would not have assessed, okay, this could be, like one direct question which will be there in the paper. But when that is there, then you feel like, okay, fine, things are making sense. Does a green fruit have chlorophyll or chromoplast? No, it has chromoplast. Fruits will have chromoplast. Chlorophyll, the purpose is mainly for photosynthesis, which the fruit does not need to do. So it will have chromoplast. But Ruth, I like your question, interesting question. Okay, so I have answers coming in. Kunal, Vishwanath, Ramya, Abhinash, Prachi. So everybody is saying the answer should be C. देखते हैं. Which of the following statements are correct regarding the general difference between plants and animal cells? First statement says, plant cells have cellulose cell walls whilst animal cells do not. This is correct. Plant cells have cellulose cell wall, animal cells do not have cell wall. Now see their specificity. They've not just asked cell wall, they've also asked what the cell wall is made up of. So first statement is correct. We eliminate option B. Second, plant cells do not have plasma membrane unlike animal cells which do. Plant cells do not have. Okay, do not they are saying. This is incorrect. Plant cells have cell wall but they also have cell membrane. Okay, cell membrane is also there or plasma membrane is also there. So this is incorrect. We have to remove A option and D option as 2 cannot be a part of the answer. So even if you don't know anything about the third statement, you don't have to worry about it because the answer is already there. The answer is C. There is no other choice. And I'm very happy to see I have like 100% score on my audience poll. Everybody has marked C. Very good. Last statement says mature plant cells has one large vacuole while animal cell has many small vacuoles. Okay. Now you know this information that plant cells have one vacuole, animals have more than one. But sometimes what happens in the exam, people start getting confused. Mature likha hai, why have they put it mature? There must be a reason to it. UPSC hai, it's such a big prestigious exam, they're supposed to challenge us. So this might mean something. Sometimes it does, but more often than not, whatever information you have, you should have confidence on that and use this technique. Many a times any confusion you have, that will be sorted out through elimination only. So mature plant cells doesn't change anything. Plant cell, if they would have written that, also doesn't change anything. It's just a way of expression which they have put. Okay, all plant cells at all stages of their life, when they're mature, when they're immature, they will always have cell wall. Okay, this has nothing to do with the context, right? I keep telling you about questions because ultimately this is not a knowledge gaining exercise or course, right? We are supposed to clear an exam and ultimately it's all about the theory of Marxism. Not the Marxism of Karl Marx, but Marxism as in getting marks. So with that, we come to our next topic, which is classification of organisms. So I have Akash, Arpita, Ishika, Smriti also who have given the correct answer. Good. Now please, anybody whose names I have not been able to read or I've missed out, please don't feel deprived, right? Because you in your own end know that you've given the correct answer. So my taking your name or not should not be an issue of botheration to you, right? We have a pool of a lot of queries and a lot of your number is in hundreds and everybody's name would not be able to come up. But again, you check the answer at your own end, applaud yourself. I am applauding everybody who's given me the correct answer, so that should be good enough. Fine. Another point which I want to bring about here is that I have two coordinators here today. Okay, there are two coordinators which I have. One is Prathamesh and one is Amit. Right? So sometimes what would happen in a class is that I would call out to Prathamesh or I would call out to Amit that, okay, Amit, Please post the answer. So what happened in one of the classes in other batches that a student complained that why are you only talking to Amit or why are you only talking to Prathamesh? We are also there. What kind of a nepotism is this? So it's not nepotism, but it's just that that is the team, that is, they are our experts who are getting whatever you are sending to me on my screen. Okay? So be cautious of that also. If that's happening in any of your classes, you should take an idea that there is a team which is coordinating, and we're going to be taking their names more often than the names of the other students, and it has nothing to do with any kind of nepotism. Okay? So coming to the classification, the different organisms, based on whatever features, whatever characteristics we have studied, we are going to divide all those organisms in 5 groups called as 5 kingdoms. Okay, these 5 kingdoms, see there are many different types of classifications, and getting into a classification is not our idea, not our objective. I'm again repeating this. We have to study with the orientation of the exam. This is not a technically correct aspect of biology. We're not going to do that. We will only take information or discuss aspects which you can somewhere use in the exam. Now nobody is going to ask you this classification that please give, there's a scientist called Whittaker. So this is Whittaker's 5 kingdom classification. I've not even used his name because it's not needed. Because that's not our point. Our point here is to give you some familiarity between these terms. That, okay, there is a term called Monera, there is a term called Protista. What happens? After this, I will tell you different groups of animals in the animal kingdom. But I'm not going to do it very technically. I'm not going to be including all the groups. Why? Because it is not needed. Okay, please trust my, I'll not say instinct, but trust my curation, trust the fact that it is a well-researched input which I am giving you, and you don't need to go beyond this. At a lot of places, you will not find this information also, but what I have found is that when we study environment or when we study different diseases, so sometimes these names come up, like arthropod. You will listen to a term called arthropod. So you should have an idea, dude, what exactly is this, right? Or there is a national program of the government which says National Helminthic Disease Program. So just to be able to help you handle those terms, we are doing this part of classification, right? There is very less scope of getting a question asking you to explain the classification. The kind of questions which you can get will be asking you to link examples with the names of the groups. Okay, so where you get the data from that is through your current affairs. If you're reading something in current affairs and they write about an organism, any animal, any plant, then you should know which group it belongs to. Okay, so we are going to, that is why we are going to study the grouping so that you can handle those questions. In environment, every year there is one question which gives you one example and gives you 5 groups. Is it a bird? Is it a reptile? Is it an amphibian? And you have to identify. So you should have some idea about how this works. The details of this section absolutely are not needed, but for your satisfaction, I'm going to tell you a chapter in NCERT. This is a part of your 9th standard NCERT. You can read that for your contentment. And for here, I'm just going to give you a line or two and one example so that just you can link and you can familiarize. Fine? That is my idea here. I have a question from Komal. How to connect all this information with current affairs? So Komal, you will start reading current affairs from your newspaper also and from your monthly magazines. The monthly magazine is going to be the standard source. In terms of drawing connections, what you can do is, if you read about something, see there is one way in which you just take the current affairs and read them separately, read this separately. The second way is when you find a direct connection. So what you can do is you can just take a sticky note and paste that in your notes. That is one way. Or if you want to be a little more liberal, you can maybe cut that out from the magazine and put it here wherever you're finding it relevant. Like suppose there is a news about mitochondria. Some mitochondrial research has taken place. So you can add it here where you have written about mitochondria. That's how you can draw the connection. If you consolidate sources, it becomes easier for you to revise. But if you think you are okay with just reading the current affairs separately also, that would be on you, right? In terms of mental connections, as you will read things more and more, multiple number of times, those connections will automatically be drawn. Fine? Chaliye. 5 kingdoms. All the organisms on this planet, they are divided into 5 groups. You can see this group. The first one is prokaryotes. Then you have protista. After that you have fungi, plants and animals. Now let's talk about their characteristics one by one. The first one, which is written as prokaryote, it is also called Monera. Kingdom Monera. Kingdom Monera. Okay, I'm not dictating anything here. Please keep writing along with me. They are prokaryotic. All the organisms in this kingdom will be prokaryotic, and because they are prokaryotic, they will be unicellular. Prokaryotic, unicellular. Examples also we have already written, you can write again. Bacteria and cyanobacteria, or also called blue-green algae. Fine. Then the next one is protista. Protista now are eukaryotic, but they are also unicellular. An example, amoeba, euglena. They are also called, these organisms, they are also called protozoa. Then you have fungi. Fungi are eukaryotic, and they can be both unicellular and multicellular. Okay, fungi can be unicellular also, multicellular also. They have both the possibilities. Example of common fungi, yeast, and then you have your edible mushrooms, right? Then we have plants, eukaryotic and multicellular. I don't think I need to give you examples of plants. You can very well manage this. And animals, eukaryotic and multicellular. Eukaryotic and multicellular, and you should be able to write the examples. So these are your 5 kingdoms, and this is the 5 kingdom classification. Okay. So I have one question asking me about the centrosome. Centrosome, see, is a structure. When you ask me, is it not important? So I cannot say it's not important for the functioning of the cell, but then this is like a little bit of, what should I say, more detail than we need. So centrosomes and cell skeleton apparatus, there are different structures which I don't think really will help you if you go into this, right? If you are interested, you can read about centrosomes on your own. Basically, in the nucleus, we have a nucleolus, and in that nucleus, there is centrosome also attached, and a lot of these structures, they will help in formation of ribosomes. So it's a little bit more complicated. So I did not want to get into it. Not very relevant as such, but yeah, you might read about this if you want to. Basically, this is for the providing, you can say, support to the internal structures of the cell. So different structures are there for that. Centrosome being one of them. Okay, all right. Now one more aspect in terms of, look at this, plants and fungi. Initially there was this debate that plants and fungi, they're supposed to be in the same group because they both have a cell wall, so they should be in the same group. But this was not done considering one small factor, and that is the mode of nutrition. Mode of nutrition of different organisms, we have autotrophic. Autotrophic means organisms which make their own food. Organisms which, you have to write this down, I'm again not dictating anything here. Autotrophic, those organisms which make their own food. Like plants. Okay, like plants. Then we have heterotrophic. Heterotrophic, which feed on others. Those organisms which feed on others, like animals. So animals will feed on other plants, or what animals will do? Animals will feed on other animals, right? So they become heterotrophic. Then we have a third category, saprotrophic. Saprotrophic organisms feed on dead and decaying matter. Saprotrophic feed on dead and decaying matter. Okay, so the difference between plants and animals, if we first consider that the logic was that of cell wall, their mode of nutrition are different. Plants are autotrophic, whereas fungi, they are saprotrophic. Okay, plants are autotrophic, fungi are saprotrophic, hence they have both been placed in different groups. Okay, they have both been placed in different groups because of their different mode of nutrition. All right? Okay. So Krishna has asked that in the stem is green in a plant and then it becomes a bark and it becomes dark in color. So Krishna, that darkened color or that bark is basically because of presence of cellulose in large amounts. Your bark is mainly composed of cellulose. That is what is giving its own composition. And as far as the stem being green, yes, when the stem is green, it does have some chlorophyll. In some plants, like cactus, for example, everything green which you see, that is a stem only. Okay, it is a stem. The leaves are actually the spines. So there are conditions where the stem is doing photosynthesis, so it is supposed to have chlorophyll. We are going to study about photosynthesis also at a later stage. But as far as the bark, it is not that same structure which is becoming dark. It is chemically a very different structure and comprised mainly of cellulose. Your bark, which is there, it is mainly composed of cellulose, which is responsible for the color it gets, color, texture, everything. Fine? Okay. Now let's start with the animal kingdom. Okay, we're going to start with the animal kingdom. Again, I am repeating this. Details here are not needed. I have put in a lot of pictures for you. Just look at the pictures, remember the name, remember one example, that's good enough. Okay. After this, when you read about any of these groups in current affairs, that is when you go into the detail, not at this stage. This is only to make you familiar, right? Please don't get worried. I'm upfront telling you, please don't feel कि इतना कम क्यों पढ़ाया है. Why are you not giving us details? You don't need the details. When you will read it somewhere, when there is a disease or any research, that is the time. Don't blindly, because there are 10 groups in this. We're not going to go into the details of all of them. Start writing. We are doing the animal kingdom. We are doing the animal kingdom. And in the animal kingdom, we are going to do which are the different groups within the animal kingdom now. First one is Porifera. You can see these words will be new for you. These spellings will be new. Everything is there on the slide. Take a look and write down. And yes, if you want to ask me, should we learn this? Do we have to learn this? Yes. I've already minimized everything. So you have to learn this. You have to remember the name. You have to remember the spelling. You have to remember the example. Okay? Write down. Porifera. You see this animal? It has pores. It has holes, you can see. These pores are the reason of this name called Porifera. So write down. Porifera. They are non-mobile. They are non-mobile animals. They are non-mobile animals with pores. They are non-mobile animals with pores. An example is sponges. You can write the example, sponges. Some important groups will have more examples. Some groups will have only one example. Depending on their importance level, I'm going to vary that. Next group. Coelenterata. Coelenterata. See this nice jellyfish? Coelenterata and the jellyfish. Write down. They are aquatic animals. They are aquatic animals mostly found at the bottom of the rocks. At the bottom of the rocks. Okay. There is another name for this, which is Cnidaria. Another name for Coelenterata is Cnidaria. And examples, you have Hydra. नाम तो सुना होगा, Hydra. Then, of course, the jellyfish, and then corals. You've heard about the corals? You're going to read a lot about corals in geography also, in environment also. So coral structure has two parts, animal part and plant part. The animal part is this, Coelenterata or Cnidaria. Okay, so this is a very important, significant example. Next is Platyhelminthes. Can you see this worm? Can you appreciate its structure? It seems like something has crushed it. Okay, it seems to be flattened. It seems like it has been crushed. This is a worm which is also called flatworm. Flatworm is a term I am hoping you might have heard. So why are they flatworm? Because that is their shape, flattened body. So they have a special property because of which they are called hermaphrodite. What is this property? Now they have the male and the female part in the same worm. Like imagine human beings, you have a separate male, you have a female, right? In this worm, both the male parts and the female parts are inside this one worm only. The sexes are not separate. That is the term we use. And when sexes are not separate, we say that the animal is hermaphrodite. So this animal does not need anything for fertilization. Internally, in its own body, fertilization will take place and new worms will be formed. Okay. These are important for us in terms of the diseases which they will cause. Like we have tapeworm. Then we have different types of flukes. For example, liver fluke. Then we have Tinea solium. This is very important. It is a very important worm which is causing diseases because of uncooked or improperly cooked pork. Okay, pork or beef, such meats have this flatworm and they can cause a disease called teniasis. The name is Tinea solium. Let's write down flatworms. Flatworms. They have their body flattened. They have their body flattened from top to bottom. They have their body flattened from top to bottom. Hence they are called flatworms. Hence they are called flatworms. Then write down they are hermaphrodites. They are hermaphrodites because the sexes are not separate. The sexes are not separate. And fertilization is internal. Fertilization is internal. And then please write down these examples. We will come across these again when we do diseases. Here you can just note them down. The examples of flatworms. The next group is the Aschelminthes. Please write down the name of the group, Aschelminthes, and observe the shape of this worm. The first worm was flattened. This you can see has a rounded body. Can you appreciate the structure? Its roundness. So this roundness is because of which it gets its name, roundworm. Okay. So if if like this is the worm, this was the worm, if I cut it in between, right, like I cut this, what I will see is that in cross section it will be circular to me. Right? You can imagine that. So that becomes its property as opposed to that of the flatworm. So it is also called nematode. And this is the word UPSC has used in its questions, where it has asked a few examples. Nematode, roundworm, and of course Aschelminthes. Now this one has separate sexes. That means there is a separate male worm and there is a separate female worm. Okay. So it has separate sexes, it has rounded body, roundworm, nematode. The special significance of this also is that it can cause a lot of diseases. So they are very important for causing different diseases. So write this down first, then we will write examples. There are a lot of relevant examples in this. Aschelminthes, roundworm or nematode. Aschelminthes, roundworm or nematode. Their body is circular in cross section, and the sexes are separate. The sexes are separate. Now write down the examples. Filarial worm, these are all causing diseases in human beings. Guinea worm, hookworm, Ascaris, all these are roundworms. Write down the examples. Okay. So I have a question which says jellyfish comes under Coelenterata and Cnidaria. Coelenterata and Cnidaria is the same thing. Just two names, like we have, Aschelminthes and roundworm. So Coelenterata's name is Cnidaria. If it was not clear to anybody else, please correct this. Coelenterata has another name which is Cnidaria. So example of this group is jellyfish. Fine. Then Anju has asked that all plants do not make their own food. So those plants will be in fungi group. No, Anju, you are not not correct in this statement. All plants make their foods. In some form or the other, plants are all autotrophic. They will all make their food. Okay. So maybe you are mistaken about something. If you've read it somewhere, if you have some substantial source to justify what you are saying, please share that with us. But I can tell you this, all plants are autotrophic. All plants make their own food. Okay? Going to the next group, Annelida. Annelida. You see this nice little earthworm? The property of this group is that their body is in segments. You can see the segments here. So just for Annelida, write down, they are segmented worms. They are segmented worms. And the examples, earthworms and leeches. Example would be earthworm and leeches. Okay. Sampath has asked, can we call hermaphrodite as asexual animals? No, absolutely not. See, for reproduction, there are two types of organisms. One is asexual, one is sexual. Sexual में you need two parents or two parts, which is male and female. Asexual में there is just one single parent. I understand that is your point of confusion also, but no union between anything. Okay. Asexual का example could be like an organism called Hydra. ठीक है, Hydra we studied, Coelenterata group. So this is now the structure of Hydra. Okay. What happens in Hydra? Hydra does asexual reproduction. That means it doesn't need any other thing. So a small bud grows on the surface of the Hydra. Then this increases in size, further increases in size. Ultimately, this part becomes separate. Okay. This becomes separate and it becomes its own Hydra. This is a process called budding. This is asexual. In sexual reproduction, two parts will come together. Like the normal case of human beings if we take. So we have an ovum or an egg, right? We have an egg and then we have a sperm. They have to meet together, they have to join to form a new organism. Okay. In the case of a flatworm, this union is taking place, or we call this as fertilization. This fertilization is taking place, though it is taking place inside the same organism, which has two different parts, the male and the female part in the same worm. But fertilization is taking place, the male and female parts are coming together, joining and forming a new organism. So it is a sexual reproduction only. It is a sexual organism only. Just that the sexes are not differentiated. Okay, that is the only thing. We are not going to call it asexual. What is the link between protista and protozoa? Are they the same, Shambhu? So protozoa is a type of protista. Okay, the most prominent group in protista is protozoa, and under that we did the two examples, amoeba and euglena. Okay, pitcher plant comes in a plant group, yes. Okay, okay, so let me tell you about pitcher plant also here. See, through queries, some additional information is coming to you. But that doesn't mean that this is only for the person who is asking the query. If it were like that, then I would have not taken the time to take it up in the class. So why I am telling you this is that if I have discussed this with you, so this should have been in your notebooks. Okay, this is your job. If I'm additionally also, if you ask me a topic which I feel relevant and will be helpful to all, I'm going to discuss that. But you please keep noting that down. Note this down. Note that Hydra reproduces by budding, a process called budding. If this is a technical information additionally which you are getting, please note this down. That is at your end. And because you all are very new to the preparation to this world, so I'm trying to, I try to keep telling you that, okay, ye bhi likhna hai, but I'm expecting that over time you will develop this insight on your own. Pitcher plant. This belongs to a group of plants called insectivores. insectivores or insectivorous plants. Now the term which Purvi has used is hunting. Okay, so she's used the word hunting, that pitcher plant hunts. So it is not exactly hunting, but what we can say, this plant can eat insects. Okay, this plant can eat insects, but that does not mean that it is not doing photosynthesis. Okay, it is doing photosynthesis, it is making its own food, right? But eating insects, you can say, eating insects is heterotrophic nutrition mode, right? So additionally, they might have heterotrophic nutrition mode, but that does not mean that the main function of autotrophism is absent. Autotrophism is there. They are making their own food. They are doing photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is how they make their own food. ठीक है? But they are also eating insects, but there is a reason for that. These plants are growing in those soils which do not have nitrogen. So, lack of nitrogen in the soil is the reason why these plants additionally are consuming insects. Okay, just to supplement them for nitrogen, they are eating insects also. But this main nutrition, main autotrophic nutrition, if you will see the pitcher plant, it has green components, it has green leaves. It is doing photosynthesis also. So you cannot exclude it, because this is not its main mode of nutrition, this is just supplementing. कि भाई soil में nitrogen नहीं है, तो अभी insects हैं, so let's me take nutrition from the insects. That is what is happening. Okay? Purvi, I hope it is clear. What about plant which has violet or purple leaves? Okay, so see, Deb Arpita, I guess, if I got that correct. So plants which have purple or violet leaves also, they have some components which have green, or at some stage of their life, they had green leaves or leaf components. Okay, that is the thing. So that is how their mechanism would be slightly altered, but they will be green at some stage. Next group, Arthropoda. Arthropoda. Now this is a group which has the maximum number of organisms. Out of all the organisms which are there, the maximum number of organisms are in this group. What is its property? Arthropods have, please write this down, a hard exoskeleton. Hard exoskeleton. Hard exoskeleton means external skeleton. So outside, their outside covering is hard. Okay, their outside covering is hard, that is their main property. Now again I am going to tell you this thing. Please don't ask why something belongs to a particular group. ठीक है? Because there are many features on the basis of which this classification has been developed. ठीक है? They see how the organism develops at early stages of life. They see what are the different, how is the body cavity arranged. They see how the different division, symmetry, a lot of features are there which are beyond the scope of our discussion here in the class. Okay, so you will not ask why this is belonging into this group, why it is not belonging into that group. Okay, why is lobster an arthropod? Why is it not in another group? Don't ask such questions, don't even think about it. I'm giving you examples. The logic of how it is being divided you don't need. So it's going to be just very unnecessarily tedious for you. I'll tell you the chapter on your personal discretion. Please read that and get that clarification. But don't question why there is an example in one part, why not in the other part. Okay? Write down the first group. There are 3 groups in arthropods. The first one is insects. The first group is insect, and with insect you can write the examples. You see this nice red ant. So ants, cockroach, bees, wasps, all of them are insects. Okay. Ants, bees, wasps, cockroaches, they are all insects. Next group, under arthropod only, there are 3 groups. First was insect. Second group is arachnids. Second group is arachnids. You can see the nice spider. Arachnids. And examples, one of course you can see spider. And just imagine the structure of spider, and similar shape and structure would be of the scorpion. Right? Scorpion, bichu. Looks like the spider. Then you have ticks, mites. Ticks and mites are the khatmal and their relative. Okay, the bed bugs which are there. Ticks, mites, scorpions and spider. The names arthropod, arachnid, they should be known to you. Next group, the third group of crustaceans. Crustaceans. Crustaceans would be all your aquatic organisms. So if you're fond of seafood, then you would be very familiar with all of these. We have crabs, we have prawns, we have lobster. Okay? All of these are arthropods. You don't have to go into why this is crustacean, why this is arachnid. Just remember the examples. That's good enough at this stage. Okay? Crabs, prawns, lobster. Also remember this thing that we are going from a simplified level to a more complex level of evolution. So the way we are writing, like we started with porifera, the most, it was non-mobile. It wasn't even moving. To the more and more advanced. The sequence in which you have written, that is the sequence of evolution also. Right? Remember that. Mollusk. Mollusk may as such there is no equating property, just write down they are aquatic animals. They are aquatic animals. Snails. You can see this nice snail. And you have octopus. Octopus and snails. Octopus and snails. Okay, Ashish is saying, does chlorophyll, abhi chlorophyll mein I think फंस गए हम ज़्यादा है ना? Chlorophyll and leaf. Okay. Photosynthesis is only responsible for those plants which are green in color. Yes, photosynthesis is going to take place in the green parts of the plant. Photosynthesis is going to be needing the presence of chlorophyll. Okay. So this part is correct, but all plants do this. all plants do photosynthesis. Uh, okay, see, in biology, there would always be some exception somewhere, maybe some very bottom dwelling plant is there, but at some stage of life, all plants have some green plants, green parts, they have chlorophyll, they do photosynthesis. ठीक है? Photosynthesis अभी हमें पढ़ना है. We have to still study that. One more group, Echinodermata. Echinodermata. Now, like we said, for the arthropods, that they have hard external covering, Echinodermata have an endoskeleton. You can write down Echinodermata, they have a calcified endoskeleton. Calcified means made of calcium. Calcified endoskeleton. And example, you can see the nice starfish. Then you have another example, you can take sea cucumber. Starfish, sea cucumber. Coming to the last group, which is chordata. That is where you and I are present. So in chordata also there are different classifications. I have missed out some groups in this list also. Okay, this is not like a final exact list. There are smaller groups, not important, very few animals are there, I've left them out. Here also I am only going to talk about vertebrates. Vertebrates are those organisms which have a backbone. Okay, animals with backbones. And in them, what happens is, first we had the fish. First came the fish. After Echinodermata, what comes is fish. It is also called Pisces. Right? And examples you have to know very, very prominently here. And keep a note of things which come in the environment section. Like there is a description that, okay, this is a threatened species. So you go and see what type of species it is. Is it a mollusk? Is it a fish? Like fish ke liye, you can have examples like the shark, right? Or salmon, your fish, or any variety of fish you can note down. After the fish, we have the amphibian. Amphibians. So amphibians may we have frogs, we have salamander, right? Then you have the next group called reptiles. Reptiles, which again you can have turtles, you can have snakes, right? Different snakes, cobra, python, you know about that. Then crocodiles. After that you have birds and mammals. In terms of evolution, birds and mammals invariably come at the same level. Okay, so we cannot really compare which is evolutionary in terms of evolution, which came first. But this sequence is fixed. First fish, then amphibians, then reptiles, and then birds and mammals. In this, you will have a lot of examples of your animals which are there in what should I say, in news. A lot of things are there. So you would need to know. Like for mammals, particularly जो endangered mammals हैं, they are more in news. Like you have dugong, or it is also called sea cow. This keeps coming in news. Or then you have pangolin. This is also critically endangered, keeps coming in news. You should know it is a mammal. Or the unlikely mammals, which you can confuse as fish, like dolphins or the whale. They are mammals. Okay, they are not fish, but they are mammals. Why they are mammals? Mammals have this property of having mammary glands. Okay, mammary glands or milk glands. So all those organisms which have milk glands or mammary glands, they would be mammals. And hence we are categorizing dolphins and whales here. Okay, and hence for the birds also you can write down any example. You have the hawk, or you can have critically endangered varieties like Indian bustard, or you can have migratory birds, they are in news. Siberian crane, like this. Okay? All right, so we're going to finish here. These are the chapters of NCERT which can be helpful. First is class 7th. We have chapter number 1, which is on plant nutrition, because we've discussed too much about plants. So you can go through this. Then we have class 8. In this, we have chapter number 8. And then similarly, class 9th also, we have a chapter on cell, which is chapter 5. And chapter 7, if you want to read about the different varieties of organisms. Okay, so you can use these chapters for your reference. Komal is saying, is it necessary to learn scientific names of animals like frogs or snake? No, absolutely not. If there is something which is predominantly there in the current affairs portion, then also I think scientific names are not really important. So you can leave them out. And snails will be found in land also. So can they be aquatic? Yes, they would be aquatic, because a large part of their life cycle is associated with water. And that's the place they might come out, but they will need water or an aquatic system for the continuation of their life. So they are aquatic. In the next class, we are going to start off with the health and diseases. Very important for your understanding, very significant for developing different concepts, and very important from the perspective of getting a question in the exam also. Okay. So I'm going to now leave you with a short video which you can watch, and we'll continue our portion in the next class. If you have any questions, you can ask, and we'll see the video. Video यहीं से चलेगा, यहीं से चला दूँ? अच्छा, ये वाला यहीं से ना? Okay.
On Earth, there are two major types of cells. prokaryotic,
Thank you,
and
Prathamesh
eukaryotic.
and Amit.
Prokaryotic cells are the simplest and most ancient types of cells. They were the only form of life on Earth for billions of years before eventually giving rise to eukaryotic cells. If you take a look at prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells side by side, you can see a number of differences. To begin with, prokaryotic cells are a lot smaller than eukaryotic cells and have a simpler structure. But bear in mind that this simple structure is actually a good thing for prokaryotes because it allows them to reproduce very quickly and very effectively. If you were to look inside a prokaryotic cell, you would probably be surprised at how simple it is. For example, prokaryotic cells lack a nucleus. In fact, the name prokaryote actually gives you a hint about its structure. Kary means kernel or nucleus, and pro means before. So basically the word prokaryote means before nucleus. The inside of the prokaryotic cell is basically an open unit with no compartments. There are no membrane-bound organelles. However, small structures called ribosomes are scattered throughout its cytoplasm. The cell's DNA is located in a region of the cytoplasm called the nucleoid region. The nucleoid region is not the same thing as a nucleus because it's not enclosed by a membrane. Prokaryotes also have a cell wall that surrounds the plasma membrane. The composition of the cell wall depends on whether the cell is an archaean or a bacteria, but basically it consists of complex polysaccharides. Prokaryotes also often possess one or more flagella, which are used for movement. In contrast, eukaryotic cells contain a membrane-bound nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. The name eukaryote also gives a hint about its structure. Eu means true, and remember that kary means nucleus, so in essence the word eukaryote means true nucleus. Eukaryotic cells are larger and much more complicated than prokaryotic cells. However, they do share a few things in common with prokaryotes. Let's take a look at a Venn diagram to compare prokaryotes to eukaryotes and to also see what areas they have in common. Let's start with their commonalities. Both prokaryotes and eukaryotes have DNA as their genetic material, have ribosomes, have cytoplasm, and have a plasma membrane. Now let's look at some of the ways they differ. Prokaryotic cells are the oldest type of cell. They're small and relatively simple. Eukaryotic cells evolved from prokaryotic cells later. They're larger and much more complex internally. Prokaryotes lack both a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus and also contain organelles. Prokaryotes are single-celled organisms. Eukaryotes can be either single-celled or multicellular. And finally, the DNA of a prokaryote is usually organized as a single circular chromosome, while the DNA of a eukaryote is organized as linear chromosomes.